Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting of the Virtual Tasting Society. Today, we are excited. We have the honor of welcoming back one of my favorite brands, one of my favorite people in the industry. Joshua Hatton here is joining us with Single Cask Nation for another fantastic lineup of their whiskeys. We have some of their retail release number 9 to taste. So we're super excited for that. That just hit shelves, so it is hitting shelves as we speak. And then a couple of their online bottles that we were super curious about and we're excited to try. But we're happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Last time you set a record for longest, most fun virtual tasting we've done, and I don't think that record has been broken since. So
Wow.
I don't know if we'll keep you up till 2 in the morning this time, but we are looking forward to a fun evening with you. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me back. I don't know if I could do the whole 4 o'clock thing. And last time I had the help of Jason, and he's literally out in the wilderness in an area that is designated as wilderness. So he has no electricity, no phones, no nothing. He's clearing trails with axes and hatchets and whatever the hobbits do in the forest. So it's just me, but I am excited to be back with you guys and excited to pour some of this stuff too. Um, it's really exciting stuff. It kind of runs the gamut between world whiskeys and grain and rum and American single malt, which is it's sort of been the talk of the town lately, but it's one of the categories that I'm most excited about these days. Um, so I mentioned it earlier before you hit record, but I want to mention it again for anybody who's watching this at a later date or what have you. The order in which we're tasting will be Wolf Island Take Two, Invergordon 34, the Macmira 13-year-old, and that Macmira is one of our online bottlings. The Copperworks 3-year-old, and then the Darsa 11, which is our rum, our Guatemalan rum, and then finally our Inchgower 10-year-old. So that's going to be the order. And all of them are cask strength except for the very first one. There's a bit of a story to that one. So let's go ahead and give this a little pour.
Speaking of cask strength, I noticed that two of the expression 2 and 3, have the exact same ABV on two very different whiskeys, and they're cask strength,
Oh, that's so interesting.
right? Isn't that crazy?
Huh.
And it's lower than the Wolf Island.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, look at that.
I have to
And
go back
there's
and look at
what's
it
that?
and try to misprint it.
Oh, I've misprinted so many things. ABVs is not one of them. Regions, styles of cognac, these are all things that I've misprinted. But no, you printed it right. 47.4% alcohol. So just really quickly by show of hands, this is Wolf Island Take Two. Who has had Wolf Island Take One? Okay, one, two, three. All right, there we go. So here's the thing, just really quickly. I don't need to tell you guys how to nose and taste this stuff. You're in Vadim's group. You're all professionals, right? Um, but I want to give you a bit of story as to this bottling that we're calling Wolf Island, which strangely enough, that term doesn't show up anywhere on the label, nowhere at all. But somehow the name has stuck, and I don't know if it's because we keep on saying it over and over again. But anyway, the reason we call this Wolf Island, Wolf is an acronym for Water of Life Film. If you've seen it already, awesome. I'm guessing that you've enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a really, really wonderful film about the craft of Scotch whiskey, of making Scotch whiskey, and it sort of uses Brook Lottie as sort of its focal point, but it really talks about the craft of Scotch whiskey. So it's worth checking out. Water of Life film. I think it's on Amazon right now. Anyway, we're quite friendly with the director and the production team. They're just as big of whiskey dorks as all of us here, and they reached out to us to collaborate on the bottling for the movie. And actually, what you're tasting is the third collaboration that we did with them. The first was Wolf Island, as it is Wolf Island. The second was a single cask of a distillery that rhymes with Schmeilen Schmark. And that was an online bottling. And then there was this Wolf Island Take Two. And so with these Wolf Island bottlings, this is one of the few times where Jason and I get to really play around. You know, as independent bottlers, oftentimes people think, well, you guys have sort of an easy job. You find good casks, you bottle said good casks, you sell those casks, and you just keep going. And in a sense, that is part of it. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of really crap casks out there, so we have to do the hard work of delineating. But then I shouldn't say crap casks. I'm going to be nicer moving on. Sorry about that. Anyway, in the case of this is a chance where working with a distillery we've had a relationship for many years, we've taken a handful of their casks and married them together, created a specific recipe that we thought really worked as a session drinker, as something you just open the bottle, bring some friends over. You're not going to need the cork. Just toss it in the garbage. You're going to finish the bottle. I have a friend of mine, Madhu from Indri, the Indian single malt. I gifted him a bottle of this, and he and two of his friends finished it in 4 hours. Like, that's how this goes. Uber, sleepover, whatever. Be safe. What's that?
It's dangerous. It's so
dangerous. Yeah. So this is the recipe for Wolf Island Take One, and this is the recipe for Wolf Island Take Two. It's very straightforward. There are 6 casks. All of the casks are single malt whiskey from the same distillery. So this is a single malt. And all of the casks are first fill bourbon, right? 5 of the 6 casks are all 7 years old and unpeated whiskey. And the 6th cask is a 9-year-old with peated whiskey. And we marry that together. So I'm not going to tell you the distillery. I'm not going to tell you the island, because that could potentially tell you the distillery. But I really, here's something that I'll tell you. Actually, what I'll tell you is I need to take a sip, because I've been yammering on and I haven't even had this sip here. What I will tell you, cheers everybody, by the way. What I will tell you is both Jason and I feel that the character of this bottling is very true to the character of the distillery's own bottlings. We really wanted to stay true to what they like to put forward. However, we put a bit of a twist in that they typically don't marry their peated and unpeated spirits together. So we kind of put our own little twist there. We bottled it at 48.8% alcohol because it just seemed to drink really well at that ABV. I think 46 is a nice starting place, but 48.8 just had a nice feel to it, both from a nose and palate perspective, but the texture as well just really seemed to pop, both with Wolf Island 1 and Wolf Island 2. So we just kind of kept them the same ABV. I'm looking through.
I'm pouring some.
The distillery of this has been.
What's that?
I think trying to figure out the distillery for this has been the most debated topic in whiskey groups. since the release of these bottles. I'm pretty set on what I think it is, but
All right.
that's usually the case for everyone, right?
I think so too.
That was my question.
So
You have a relationship, you've had a relationship with this distillery for a while. How long of a while? Would you say 10 years or so?
I would say we've had a relationship with this distillery for a good while. um, I'd love to hear people's guesses. It really is nice to hear what people think it may be, because it's got, it's the interesting thing about tasting something blind. You think you're a great taster, right? You wear shirts like this. I taste and I know things, right? Until you do it blindly, and then fuck all. Like it just everything you thought is out the window. So, pardon my language, by the way. So I'm just curious, given your experiences, and it's okay to be wrong. I'm always wrong when it comes to blind. What you guys think it is, Vadim? What are your thoughts?
I did deductive reasoning on this, right? So it's not totally blind because we know it's an island distillery. It obviously produces heated and unheated. So that narrows our list down quite a bit. And then we look at what distilleries you have a relationship with. So my guess is Aaron.
Okay. All right.
I agree with that. And Joshua, it makes me happy to hear you say that you're trying to keep the distillery character. I don't have a ton of experience with Aaron, but it seems to mesh with the distillery character that I've picked up.
Okay.
With your own tweak on it. So it's not like a perfect facsimile. But
Yeah.
I like Aaron.
I guess
I looked back. I think it's my most commented on Instagram post ever because people were just debating it.
That's fantastic.
And I think I told you that Aaron is the one distillery that I discovered because of you guys. I'm now
that's
a
right.
huge Aaron fanboy, and I've
I
done
love that.
we've done 3 or 4 Aaron tastings. We did an Aaron tasting for
You did one recently, didn't you?
we did one in January for what's
Burns
the
night.
Burns
night.
Burns night, and we did a poetry
Ah.
contest, and the fine folks at Holding sent out bottles to the winners. Like it was a hootenanny and everything. It was a lot of fun. And they like the folks at Holding have been fantastic for us. So we did an Aaron tasting. The first one we did was the global brand ambassador, Mariella.
Yeah, she's incredible.
She's fantastic.
Did,
so we've done.
what did she pair it with panettone?
No, this was
No.
back like in the middle of COVID, so
Okay.
no food or anything, like very hands off. Yeah, she zoomed in the middle of the night, or what was her night?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did
sure.
a tasting with Mariella Sunday.
Oh, with Drammers. Yeah.
With Tremors.
Yeah, she's a superstar. She's really good.
She is.
Yeah, and so I discovered Aaron through Single Cap Nation, through One Nation and the whiskey.
That's great. Yeah, they were, they are them and Glen Murray are the 2 distilleries we've had the longest standing relationships. Aaron was our first, and they had said to us, we want to be your first bottling, which really felt special because we were nobody. At the time, and then we reached out to Glen Murray, and they were really keen to work with us too. So those were 2 earliest on. So I'm glad that a distillery that we've been with for so long and saw an importance in us, we were able to open your eyes to them. Like that's part of the reason they said we want to work with an independent bottler like you, because it was on us to share a distillery that no one had heard of at that time. So.
Absolutely. It's getting harder and harder to find distilleries that no one has heard of. And that's what we love. That's all I'm about, right? I stole that idea from you, really, is the reason the virtual tasting society exists is for people to try things they've never heard of. Is to expand the palates, expand our horizon, give the little guy a chance and try something new.
It's great. Cool.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
It's good to see you, Joshua. Alyssa Rose here.
Oh, there you are. Your window moved. Hey there.
So I just want to say that the Wolves are awesome, and we also know the director of the Magic of Life, but we got that access really early on with Single Cast Nation's Stones of Stennis.
Ah,
Which
yeah.
I will tell you was like one of my first bottles of Single Cast Nation. And
That's awesome. Yeah.
I just loved when we did the watch party together. That was so fun. So I just look back on my very first with Single Cast Nation, and we'll always look on fondness with that because of what you
Thank
guys
you.
did also with the movie. So
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
That makes
That's
me want to
incredible.
celebrate with a second pour.
I gotta tell you that Stones of Stennis is, we finished it not too long ago, but man, do I miss it. So can you do another one, please?
There will be another Stones of Stennis coming out, a 16-year-old, and I think it's from Second Fill PX. So watch this space, as the kids are wont to say. It's quite different than the last one, but it's really pretty. I think you'll like it. Are we ready for pour number 2?
Oh,
Cool. And please, if I'm going too fast or if I'm going too slow or whatever, please, raise your hand, yell out. Oh, hold on really quickly. Joshua, this is from Jeff and D. Yes, the Wolf Island and Wolf Island 2, all the whiskeys from the same distillery and the recipes are the exact same. It's just it's these 6 casks and those 6 casks.
The nose on 1 is really different than 2. That's
Yeah.
kind of threw us. I mean, it's much sweeter. So
Oh, we did the one next to the 2 at Storied Company together, didn't we?
I don't think we did one at Storied Company, did we? Think
We
only-
did. We did one next to 2. I brought extra bottles of that because 1 was sold out, but 2 had just come in, and I wanted to show that side by side.
Okay. I've slept.
Because we wanted to do 6 bottlings, and release number 9 only had 5, so it made sense to bring in Wolf Island Take 1 as that 6th bottling.
I don't remember. There was whiskey involved.
If you have both in front of you, Jeff, which one are you preferring? Because I remember tasting one and thinking it was a little too peaty, and maybe my palate's changed over time,
Yeah.
but I'm loving this one.
I'm leaning towards 1.
I'm leaning towards 1 also.
But
Towards
also,
one?
you're a
I'll have
big
to go
Ardbeg
back.
fan, so-
But I want to get on to the Invergordon.
Okay, there we go.
I'd like to do a side by side, so I should have pulled it out and I didn't think to do that.
We'll give it a second. Let him get it.
I just did it, and I remember preferring 1. I felt like the mouthfeel on 2 was a little bit more consistent, a little bit more creamier almost. Both fantastic killer whiskeys, but two surprised me.
I love that. I love it. So long as you enjoyed them both, if one was like, man, that was crap, and the other one was good, then there's a problem. All right. What are we tasting? We're tasting our Invergordon 34-year-old. I have a feeling that all of us are going to see from independent bottlers, all of us are going to see more and more single grain being bottled, rum, world whiskeys, and American single malt. Not just because they're great categories of spirit, but because Scotch single malt has become prohibitively expensive from I'm an independent bottler, I want to buy whiskey and bottle it and sell it perspective. It used to be that, the rule of thumb was if you're an independent bottler and you're bottling a non-Isla whiskey or a non-Macallan, big name whiskey, a fair price was $10 per year at 10 years old and up. Like that typically was how it was. And that just made sense. And that seemed to be the formula for years. And things have changed. That's just not how the cask brokering works anymore. And bottlings that we could sell for $100 at 10 years old, we'd have to sell for $180 at 10 years old. Or worse. And so I think you're going to start seeing a bit of a shift from us, a bit of a shift from other bottlers. That's not necessarily a bad thing, especially from this perspective of this group, which is what do we want to do? Taste new and different things. So I think following independent bottlers, whether it's Single Cask Nation or Catton Heads or Impacts Collection or Gordon MacPhail's, whoever, it's still a great place to be. Just know things are going to change from a money perspective. So anyway, off my soapbox, let's get to the whiskey. Invergordon is a grain distillery that's half owned by Edrington and half owned by White and Mackay. And so both are using this distillery to fill for their various blends, whether it's the White and Mackay blend or Famous Grouse or what have you. The year on this, okay. So this was distilled in 1988. And from a grain whiskey perspective, what I can tell you is starting in 1985, the majority of the grain distilleries that were in production at the time changed their mash bill from about 10% barley, 90% corn or maize. I don't know if there's a difference between the two, to 10% barley, malt, basically, and 90% wheat. And the reason for that is grain distilleries are meant to make really inexpensive liquid to go into really shitty blends so that business people can go to hotels and when their work is done, they say, give me a scotch on the rocks. It doesn't matter what they're drinking. Their day is done. They're like, make it happen, right? And so that's what most grain whiskey is meant to do. Get to about 3 years of age and go into a crappy blend. Now, the thing is, grain distillers are making so much whiskey. Like as a comparison, I think Glenfiddich or Glenlivet, one of them, makes around 14 million liters of spirit per year, where Invergordon, I think, does 60 million liters of spirit per year, if I have that number correct, because they're filling for so much blend. And if you think about your typical Scotch whiskey blend, it's about 80% grain, 20% malt. So it makes sense that a grain distillery would produce more liquid. But everybody knows the whiskey industry sort of tanked in the 80s and it spent the better part of the 90s and the better part of the early 2000s before it really started to pick up. And so throughout this time, these grain distilleries kept producing, but instead of putting 3-year-old liquid into a blend for someone, liquid sat to the side. And so that's how independent bottlers have gotten access to some of these older grains, which for grain whiskey, that's a good thing. You don't really want to be drinking young grain whiskey, not because the spirit is bad. The spirit's actually excellent. It's the cask management that's typically not great. They're typically using 3rd fill, 4th fill, 5th fill casks because all that liquid needs to do is legally sit in an oak vessel for a period of years before it can be called whiskey. And it doesn't matter if that oak vessel is providing flavor or just being an oak vessel, right? And so that's why you need angel share, you need loss for this whiskey to evolve in cask. And the only way you could do that is with an extended period of time. Like Vadim had said, before we got to this, he noticed the ABV on this was 47.4% alcohol. And it's 47.4 because that's what they've lost over these 34 years. They're going to fill these casks typically 63.5%, sometimes higher, depending on availability of casks. But you're losing volume and you're losing ABV, which in the case of grain whiskey is a good thing because these less active casks over time do something. When you lose liquid, the oxygen that comes in to replace that liquid helps that maturation along. So now after I've yammered on, I'm going to actually nose and taste this. This is from it's from a refill sherry cask. Now, when we say refill, that's a total guess. I remember when we got this cask, it had just said sherry. And so we chose refill from the perspective of it's not super dark after 34 years. And when you nose it and you taste it, we assumed if it were a second fill cask that we would get more sherry presence. And so we're working on the assumption that it's refill, meaning that it's at least a third fill. We don't think that it's a fourth fill cask. We assume it's a third fill on this. But from my perspective, that's kind of okay. Like grain whiskey is very delicate and can get overpowered by too much sherry. And sometimes that's okay if you just want an absolute just like sherry bomb. But sometimes it's okay to have the sherry balance out the spirit and vice versa. And that's sort of what we went for with this one, is that there's that nice balance between the spirit, that wheat forward sweet spirit, along with the slightly heavier sherry.
I've noticed over the years that there are a ton of whiskey that came out, single casks that get bottled that were produced in 1988. And I'm always looking for an 87. I think that's my birth year. And those seem to be really hard to find. It's not just a bad year for whiskey. Or maybe it got bottled young. I don't know. Because I'm having a really hard time finding like this was an 88. And I've seen tons of 88s. But very, very few 87.
Yeah, it's interesting. From grain distilleries, I think you'll have a better chance finding 87 at some point because they will have kept distilling. The interesting thing about grain distilleries or brokers that work with grain distilleries to then sell casks on to blenders or bottlers, it's quite often when they're offered stock, they're offered specific vintages. And so, 2-3 years ago, you will have seen a ton of sherry cask Cameron Bridge that was 25 to 26 years old come out. We bottled some, Impex Collection bottled some, Cadden Heads, and so on. And it's just because that's what was on offer. I would guess at some point you're going to see a pile of 87 pop up at some point. So don't give up. From a malt perspective, you're going to have a hard time anything from 81 to 89 simply because distilleries were shuttering, they were producing less liquid, all of that stuff. Wait a second, Jeff has got something from 87. Jeff and D.
I'm sorry, Joshua. Here you go, Vadim.
Dumbarton. There you go.
From 87.
Wow.
It's a Duncan Taylor.
Is that a malt?
Grain. Dumbarton is grain distillery.
Dumbarton
Was
is
a grain distillery.
It's right outside of Glasgow, isn't it?
It was, yeah. It's. I think it's long gone. It's been demolished.
Yeah,
Because
it's
you
gone.
got it, Duncan Taylor.
Yeah, 87.
What's funny is that a couple of years ago, this would have been 5 years ago, I was able to find an 87 at K&L at one of their bottlings. It was a 31-year-old single grain. And here's the kicker. Here's the difference between now and then, 4 years, nice. It was on clearance for $89. So I was able to buy the bottle for under $100. And at that point, $100 was my limit. So I bought the one bottle and went home happy. When I got home, I realized not only was it distilled in 87, it was distilled in May of 87, which is
Oh, wow.
and now I can't open the bottle because I only have one. And I was at the store looking at cases of this stuff, and I'm like,
I could
now I
probably,
would have bought a case.
I
But
could
at the
probably
time, I was
get
like,
you
I
this
spent
bottle
$100 on whiskey. I can't.
because it came from locally.
Yeah. So
Happy birthday, Vadim.
thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank
What's the actual day?
you. May 30th?
May 30th. There you go.
Happiest birthday. It's great to have a birthday bottle.
Yeah,
We already celebrated with Vadim, but I think he's gonna get a Dumbarton now, so.
Actually, Qua, some of you know Qua, found an 87 grain that was on sale from his favorite independent bottler earlier this year and ordered it, and that was my birthday gift from him to me this year. So
Oh, nice.
that's waiting for. I was in Europe for a couple weeks, so that's when he comes over, we're gonna crack it. The deal was I have to crack it because knowing me, I'm gonna save it for too long.
Nice. I just saw Seabass saying he's holding out for 1990. I graduated high school in 91. So there we go.
Because you're old, Joshua. Almost 50. Well-
Yeah.
You're all very young yet.
John, you were showing a 28-year-old something. What was that?
Yeah, actually thought this was, I just pulled this out. I thought it was an 87, but it's actually an 88. Sorry, I might have my blur on. Strathclyde K&L, distilled in June of 88, bottled in 2016. And I've had it for a long time. But Vadim, I swear I pulled this out because I had it in my office for a long time. And I thought it was an 87, and I went to go grab it like all excited, and it's an 88, which works for me. Works out for me because I'm an 88. I was born in 88, but yeah. So, also, I looked up the price on this. To your point, Vadim, $79.99 back in
Look at that.
2016. Yeah, for 28. Pretty crazy.
Speaking of 87s and John Devney last year found me a single malt. I think it was a 16-year-old single malt that was distilled in 87. He found it.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
I don't remember what the distillery was, but it's hidden.
Was it I think it started with an L. Longmorn?
I think so. Yeah.
Longmorn, maybe? Yeah. It was bottled in like 2004. I don't even know. It was bottled a long time ago, but yeah, it was an old one.
It was like a 16-year-old that was distilled in 87.
Yeah, dusty. I found it on a shelf a few years ago. So, yeah.
But thank you so much. Back to this. We're talking about this in Burgundy. Let's get back to it. I think people are tasting it. What are people getting on this?
Yeah, we got. I liked Seabass's custard on the palate. I got that. I got a little a hint of sulfur too, which I kind of like. I like just a wee bit of sulfur on there, and I think it's got just the right amount for my palate. Grapefruit on the nose, I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a fair. It was kind of like a caramelized brown sugar on top of a grapefruit, but I got some kind of citrus on it.
I'm pouring
Really
such
rich.
tiny pores. I gotta reevaluate. Black pepper. That's nice. For those of you who don't have any of our bottlings, just really quickly to show you how our labeling system works. Where are we? There we go. So obviously there's the company name, the distillery, the age, the ABV on the front. The color of the cask indicates either a region or a style. So orange is single grain. And then, or dark orange is single grain and light orange is Bayside, light blue is Isla, and so on. And then you turn it around a little bit and you'll get all of the cask details, the ABV, ages, truncated tasting notes, regions, etc. And then perhaps the most important part is our flavometer, which just gives you scale from 1 to 10, you know, where this is going to be: floral, sweet, rich, nutty, spicy, earthy, smoky, oaky. So that's a nice indication, you know, especially for distilleries you may not be familiar with, but you kind of know what your limits are as far as smoke goes, or a floral quality and so on. Ooh, sour cherry. Who got that one? Jason. That's great. Wild ride. Who said that? Jason? I like that. I like someone talking about a grain whiskey as a wild ride. That's cool.
So I went ahead a little bit and then cleared my palate and came back to this.
Yeah.
Totally different taste the second time around.
Because of the third thing that you tasted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a heads up for folks, save a little bit, taste it another time.
And so did you like that? Did you like that going back?
Actually, I preferred it
Before.
right?
Okay, interesting.
It's not bad going back. I
Yeah.
prefer the
Yeah. Okay.
first taste, not the second. But I just a heads up, I got a totally different thing, and I feel like people should save a little and try it another day.
Well, the Macmira is so completely different, Kate, that I mean, I think we bought 2 bottles of that because I bought one and then I said, oh shit, I should have gotten another. And so I went right back, you know, as soon as I got it, I went right back and bought another one because we finished it so fast. So it's very you know, it's much more complex and different, I think, than the Invergordon. Alec and I aren't digging the Invergordon as much as we did Wolf 2, and I know we don't dig it as much as the Macmira because, you know, we really dig the Macmira. But you know, it's good, but sorry.
No, that's fine. Do you like grain whiskey in general?
I mean, Alec, what do you think? We've had grains.
We've had plenty of grain whiskeys that we've liked. This one, I don't know. I don't feel like it has as much depth as I would like in a 34-year-old whiskey.
Okay.
Well, it might be also that, I mean, it just may be that this isn't our jam in this particular bottling. I mean, you know, I hate to write off an Invergordon. We've had an Invergordon before, just not a 34-year, right?
Yeah.
So it might just be this particular bottling isn't our jam, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
So
Well,
Yeah,
if you've had older ones of theirs, if you've had anything that was 1984 and before,
Yeah.
then you're looking at a completely different distillate.
Whiskey.
You're looking at predominantly corn, and so Invergordon used to be much heavier, much richer, you know, almost, you know, just very sweet and jammy. So it could just be a spirit thing, or what we've bottled just doesn't jive with your palate, and that's totally cool too.
Well, and you know, it's probably why I have almost every bottling that you put out since I've, you know, Stones of Stennis.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, it just I did what Kate said, and I had already only poured part of it because I've learned my lesson on you know, save some for later and come back to it. So yeah.
But I think when I first tasted this and nosed it, it smelled like brandy to me. I was drinking it going, if I didn't know this was whiskey, I think I would have just assumed it was brandy. Right. And I could sort of taste the whiskey in there. But when I came back to it, and it just a completely different profile from start to end. And I'm thinking this is going to hold up better with food. And so it might be something that, Elisa, you might try some food, taste it with food and see how it holds up. And I bet you it's going to taste totally different to you. Give it a shot.
Well,
Yeah.
those of you that know me and food,
Um,
not the best eater.
I question whether it was overaged at 34 years. I mean, that's a long for grain whiskey, isn't that pretty long aging?
Not typically. No, I mean, it's sort of average. There's plenty of 30s and 40s out of there for grain you see bottled. It's rare that you see anything under 25 years old for bottled single grain. You know, I've got a bunch of 40-year-olds. I have a 51-year-old. You see them around, and you typically find them older simply because they're not that great younger. So
Sure.
anyway,
That was the worst
you know?
lead up to my next question of saying, I know an independent bottler who bottled a 14-year-old single grain. Thanks, Joshua.
yeah, well, we put that in a fresh bourbon cask for 4.5 years, something like that.
Fresh bourbon or fresh sherry?
Fresh bourbon cask. The
Wow.
Girvan 14-year-old, is that the one you're referring
Oh,
to?
I'm talking about North British on the website.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Yes, that was in PX for 9 months or something like that. 9 months, 14 months?
14 months.
14 months. And yes, in that case, grain really works at a young age because you've got wood helping it along, right? But oh, that's great.
Well, that's because then I suppose with the fresh wood, you've got the ability for a lot of the taste of that new wood to really have an impact on the juice.
You can, but here's the other thing too, just getting really geeky. North British has a very heavy spirit style. I don't think we would have done something like that with a young Invergordon because it's much lighter in character. It really works with the North British.
I was going to say that this Invergordon does come off a bit lighter. Like not a voluminous mouthfeel, not velvety. I mean, it's very good. I enjoy it very much, but it's very much a lighter whiskey.
Yep. Yeah, which is why I put it early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one that you definitely should have on a shelf just to, you know, something interesting, something different.
Yep. Yeah, cheers, man. Are we ready to move on to pour number 3? Cool.
I think McNair is the one that's been hyped up the most out of
Oh my gosh, I just love this one.
Just
we'll
really
sit out by
quickly.
the fire pit. We'll sit outside at in our fire pit in Santa Monica last year after it came out, and we went through a whole bottle like so fast.
Oh wow. That's awesome. Yeah, this one's kind of dangerous. I will say I'm a little upset that Anna's cat, Anna and Adam's cat, is now missing. Here she is. All right. So Mac Mira. So now we're leaving the world of SCN retail. We've gone to the world of what we call SCN Special Projects Division. It used to be called SCN Online, and then we started calling it Special Projects Division because the online platform, oh, I love it. Who said it? Peach rings. Everybody gets peach rings on this one. I love it. Oh, it makes me so happy when I had that one. Anyway, so our online platform allows us to do something that we're not really, that we can't do so easily in a retail setting, and that is to tell complicated stories, either introducing distilleries that no one has heard of, especially here in the US. You know, Mac Mira came to the US in the early 2010s for a hot minute and then left. And we haven't had any since. Maybe they came back one more time. I don't think so. But they're fairly popular overseas. So online gave us the opportunity to really help tell that story, get people excited about this distillery. But it also allows us to tell other stories like Some of you may be familiar with a 4-year-old Catoctin Creek we did some time back, maybe 2 years ago, where we bought 2 of their casks, and it was a spirit style that they only ran 2 casks worth of liquid for, and we took that liquid and we put it into an X Kilhoman PX cask for 2 years. So it was this rye and a Kilhoman sherry cask, right? And so the online allows us to tell these interesting stories. And so when we want to introduce distilleries that are new to people, quite often we'll do that online. So Macmira, we've had a relationship with a little while, mostly through Jeff. And they recently started opening up cask sales to independent bottlers, and we were one of the first ones to get a cask from them. We bought 2, one for the US, that's this one, which is a 13-year-old, and it's 13 years in new charred oak. So this, which is kind of unusual for single malt, at least outside the US. We'll have single malt in new charred oak. You don't see it from other countries. Here's some interesting things I can tell you about Macmira Distillery, and specifically about this one. So the Macmira Distillery has a distillery that they simply call vertical. And it's called vertical because it runs production in a vertical manner. The first part of the process is on the top floor of the distillery. The next step is on the second to the top, and so on, all the way to the end. So everything is gravity fed. It's like the IKEA of distilleries. Though you'd need a lot of Allen wrenches, I suppose. Anyway, so one of the interesting things about their fermentation is, when you think of single malt Scotch whiskey, they're using straight up distiller's yeast typically. And sometimes they play around with different yeast styles to bring out a fruity character or to bring out a dry character or what have you. Some will use Belgian brewer's yeast, things like that. Macmira uses a simple baker's yeast that you can buy at any local grocery store. You want to make bread? Use this yeast. You want to make Macmira whiskey? Use the same yeast. So that's what they're using for the fermentation on this one. More peach notes. I love this. So Ken says peach. Seabass is talking about high school jobs, cutting fruit. Honeydew. Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. Stone fruit. That's great. So the other thing that I'll tell you about this, aside from being a vertical distillery and using a baker's yeast, the production from a distilling. Oh, sorry, Siri. The production from a distilling standpoint is the same, right? It's double distillation, copper pot stills. The difference maker, or the other difference maker, then becomes their maturation. So many of their casks are matured in underground caves or in an underground cave. And this happens to be one of them. And so in that cold, damp cave, you're losing ABV. And so that's why at 13 years of age, even though they filled this cask at 63.5% alcohol, you're looking at 47.4%. That is natural cask strength. And it's just, that's what they lose because of the dampness. If you're in a dry climate, like hot, dry climate like Israel, you're going to lose water. And that's why their ABV goes up. Same with India and with Amrut or Kavalan in Taiwan. But here you're looking at a cold, damp climate, but very damp. So they lost a lot of alcohol pretty quickly. Again, right? Whiskey number 2, after 34 years, they got to 47.4% alcohol. Whiskey number 3, the Macmira, after only 13 years, they got 47.4% alcohol. So you can just imagine the humidity that's going on there to pull the alcohol out and not the water out. Ooh, cola cubes. Look at that.
How many bottles?
So,
Cask?
what's that?
How many bottles came out of this cask?
250.
That's a lot. Is it bigger than a regular?
No. So that's the weird thing. It lost ABV, but it didn't really lose volume because typically speaking, now Greg, this was a bourbon barrel or I shouldn't say bourbon barrel. It was barrel in size, meaning that it's 200 liters or 53 gallons. So on average, when a barrel cask is filled to the top, you can get 257 bottles out of that, 75 CL or 750 milliliters. We got 250. So they really didn't lose volume, they lost alcohol and somehow must have gained volume. But this cask was not messed about with at all. It's just what happened. Now it could be that this cask simply was on the higher end from a tolerance standpoint, and maybe it was closer to 56 gallons or 57 gallons or something like that. We don't really know, but yeah, it's strange that we got 250 bottles out of this one.
Doesn't it make sense though, in a very damp environment, that you're not going to lose the water part of it? You're gonna lose the alcohol part.
But volumes should still be like that. Does make sense, but along with alcohol goes volume.
Right.
That right. So
Right. So you lost some volume, which is why you didn't get the top number of bottles. But most of what's in here is water. Anyway, right?
But when you're going from 63.5% to 47.4%, I would just argue that's more than 7 bottles worth of volume being lost. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it seems that
we're topping it off.
Right? Like you would think, but no. Yeah, they just sort of stick them in the cave and there you go. So there's one that we bottled for outside the US as well, and that one was just a first fill bourbon cask of Macmira, but it still has that peachy note. So I think the peachy quality, that sort of stone fruit thing, is key to Macmira's style. It's kind of like, Glenmorangie talks about stone fruit a lot, and Balvenie is that honeyed malt and so on, right? There's key characteristics to a distillery. And then I think peach just sort of follows Macmira along.
I recently got to try some official bottlings of Macmira, and they were delicious. That was, yeah, definitely
well worth your time. Yeah.
Solid category.
They also do some interesting things where they smoke their malt with juniper, right? I don't think they have peat, so they use some of like local botanicals to smoke their malt. So you can find some of that around, which is quite interesting. What else? We got peach rings, we got honeydew, we got damn, this is good. What other notes are people getting?
I have that odd Coca-Cola note that it just, when it's front palate, but when it sits on my palate for a while, because I'll hold on to it, I get a Coca-Cola taste, and I don't know why, because I'm not a fan of soda, but it makes me think right away of Coca-Cola, and somebody up there said the cola cubes, probably, huh?
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, Elisa. I get cherry and licorice, and ultimately, in my mind, that's Coca-Cola or cherry Coca-Cola. And like you, I'm not a soda drinker, so.
I mean, I love it. I mean, but that definitely on the back end, on the finish, there is an interesting licoricey but it's not overpowering, but it could just be that I was raised on Finnish licorice, which is very salty. So the black
Mm.
licorice that I'm thinking of is a very salty licorice. And so I don't really, when I think of licorice, I don't
Yeah, I
really
love
think
that
of it
salty
like,
black licorice.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think more of a fennel-y type taste that I'm getting more
Yeah.
than a licorice.
I get on the finish for me, I get that licorice up front, but on the finish for me, it's wax lips, like those red wax lips. I don't know if anybody knows that candy. You know, there's some people who are born a bit
That
too
is a
late for it,
long time
potentially.
ago. Like we'd wear that in school and then your teeth would bite through it. Yeah, I remember those.
And
That's
it was
Eric
terrible at
and
first.
cigarettes.
Your mouth had to, like, you would chew it and you're like, why am I basically eating a candle? And then and then, you know, just your own body heat melts that, and then the flavor comes out, and it's just like you want to chew it forever. It's terrible until it's not.
I would also say for you folks in California, I was poking around on the KNL website recently, and y'all have McMira down there, so you should buy it. I'm just recommending because I can't get it here. So
Is
please.
it the liter bottle, Anna?
I don't think so.
Does
There's
it-
a couple things, and I think one of them was is it the Svensk Rook? I'm gonna say it so badly. I don't. Chris would be so mad at me. I can't pronounce it. But this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
So that's
there's a
interesting.
couple.
When they came to the US, because everything they bottled was in 70 CL or 700 ml, they also had access to a 1 liter bottle. So when they first came to the US, they came with a 1 liter bottle because at that time, their other bottle size was not legal. And then it went away. And so I was curious if the one you saw was a 1 liter bottle, but 3 SKUs on clearance. Look at that. Listen, I'd love for you to buy my whiskey, but please buy some McMira too. That's awesome.
I mean, this one's also on the shopping cart. I'm just waiting till the end of the night to decide on other ones, but also get those too.
Ah, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got the Copper Works because Alec and I went up to Seattle and went to Copper Works, and while there was one bottling that they had that we liked, and they didn't have any available at the distillery for us to take back. So, you know, I'm kind of anxious to try the Copper Works, and I'll tell you the Inchgauers. I have I've gone back and bought all of the Inchgauers. So I have, the 10 and 11. I've, other ones that you guys have, but I'll tell you, this McMira, like I said, hands down. And I think I posted that when you asked on the Facebook page, what's been one of your favorites? I think I put on there the McMira.
The McMira, yeah.
And Virginia Distillery, sorry. We didn't get that one, but the Virginia Distillery.
You missed the Virginia Distillery one?
No, I bought 2 of those too.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying
Okay.
this group missed the Virginia Distillery, and I'm going to tell you another one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I actually gave Vadim, I bought a couple, I think I bought 2 or 3 bottles of the Virginia. I actually gave one to Vadim. He has it. Yeah, have you cracked it yet, Vadim? Or are you still holding it?
Oh, I'm saving it.
Yeah,
Joshua knows
gotta-
my love affair with Virginia.
You got to crack that Virginia.
It's awesome.
We've gone through 2 bottles of that too.
Yeah, it's killer.
Are you talking about the cuvee?
No, it's Virginia Distillery that Single Cask Nation put out is a whiskey.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to tell you that particular Virginia. Yeah. I'm telling you now, I wish that I would have bought another bottle just to put in my dupe cupboard, because we went through the dupe just as fast as we did the first one. And our fire pit in the backyard is really dangerous in Santa Monica once the weather gets nice, and it's starting to.
Yeah.
Because we'll sit out there, we'll grab a bottle and go back and forth between our bar, and some of you have seen it. It's not huge, but it's got some nice. You could spend a nice evening here. Jordan's been here, and I think, wouldn't you say, Jordan, you got a nice little selection of Single Cask Nation.
Absolutely.
Well, for those that missed out on that one or wished they had another one, we were about to do another Virginia Distillery cask. So watch this space. It's not sherry, it's something else, but it is pretty goddamn good. So
That's good.
I think
Are
you'll
you
like
gonna,
it.
Joshua, are you gonna talk about your podcast that you have out as well when you talk about these whiskeys? Because it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Saying.
I was gonna mention it toward the end.
Okay. I was just wondering. But I'll
Okay.
wait. I'll hold back.
Well, no, I think okay, but I don't know what to do now. Look at deer in headlights.
But Dean's gonna yell
No,
at me
you're
for
good.
talking.
I don't yell at anyone. And I don't know what podcast you're talking about. I only know of a podcast.
There you go. That's the
Oh
man.
my
No.
goodness.
If the key near no. He said podcast because we don't have a podcast. We have a podcast.
That's the OG listeners. Man, that podcast taught me so much. It's great.
So
It's
for those of you that don't know, Jason and I, my business partner, is out in the wilderness chopping trees and all sorts of things. We've had a podcast. I didn't even mean to say podcast. We've had a podcast for 7 years now called One Nation Under Whiskey, and we're midway through season 7, and it has a sister podcast. It's in the same stream called Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey.
Mhm.
The episodes come out every Wednesday, and the Extra Extra, it's all about whiskey, is now starting with season 4 because we're now in season 4. We started doing not a live, but a YouTube version of it because people said, for some reason, we want to see your faces. So we decided to press record with cameras. So you can watch us, you can listen to us, but yeah, check it out. One Nation Under Whiskey, no E in whiskey. We never do that. If you're looking for that, please check it out. If you like geekiness, deep interviews with producers, blenders, actors, comedians, musicians, and the occasional dick joke, you're going to love our podcast.
I also
Jim.
like
Joshua, sorry, you guys going into the Macbeth was incredible last episode. Just so much fun.
Cheers, man. That was a lot of fun.
I won't do spoiler alerts, but
Okay.
it ends
Okay.
well.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet, so don't spoil it.
Okay.
By the way, I am in that camp that appreciates the fact that you now add the audio file back onto the podcast world, because I was the one having issues YouTubing while driving. I couldn't figure out how to get it to, like, if I turn the screen off, it turned off. So I appreciate that option now. If I have the ability to go on YouTube and see your beautiful faces, I always do. But if I'm like jogging or let's be real, more like driving, then it helps to have the audio file.
You missed seeing the introduction of my Michael Caine glasses. Not watching the Extra Extra episode.
Yeah, like I said, I've been traveling for the last couple of weeks, so I haven't had a chance to. I'm catching up on everything.
Are we ready for whiskey number 4?
We are.
All right. So we're now leaving Sweden. We're gonna go to America, and we're visiting Anna's fair state of Washington. Though not her distillery. We're not at Westland. We're at a neighbor distillery. We are at Copperworks Distilling. Westland was actually one of our very first distillery partnerships, and it's a partnership that we value quite a lot. And I did give people a hint that there is a Virginia distillery cask coming. I will also hint that our bottling hall just received a new Westland cask, and holy freaking holy, it is going to be something. You liked that cask, right, Anna? I think you liked that one. All
He's
right.
contractually obligated to say yes.
Yes, yes. I like
Otherwise, I don't have to. I would say, oh, that was interesting. Otherwise,
yes, exactly. Interesting.
It was unique.
Yeah. Choice words. So here we are with Copperworks. This is a 3-year-old. This is another instance where we didn't bottle a single cask, right? Like the Wolf Island, we did 6 casks with that bottling. With this, sometimes we marry casks together and we do double cask nation. And here's the quick answer to why we did a double cask nation with them. Copperworks were so good to work with us on it, and they sent us a good number of samples, and each one of them that we tasted, they were all doing a few things really well, but they seemed incomplete. It's kind of like basically any distillery, right? This is why distilleries produce so much liquid and fill so many casks, is most single casks of whiskey are really good components. They are not like fully realized end products. That's why you've got master blenders that understand how to take a series of casks to create a really wonderful ride of nose to palate to finish with consistency, right? Batch over batch over batch. With single casks, you typically don't get that. And that is what we found with Copperworks. And we told them with the samples you provided, it was, oh, these ones are doing this stuff and these ones are doing this. And so we just decided to play around a little bit. And so this is a marriage of 2 casks, cask number 294, which was distilled in September 2018. And then cask number 321, which was distilled in February of 2019. And this was bottled in August of last year. 454 bottles from the marriage. And this is new charred oak, but you're looking at 2 different char levels. I forget which one is which, but one of them, both casks were toasted oak, but then one of them had a number 2 char, so sort of a lighter char, because your char levels are number 1 to a number 5, right? And they call number 5 alligators, like significantly charred. So one of them was a number 2 char and one of them was a number 3 char. And we thought that the marriage of those 2 just really worked quite harmoniously. Last year, or a callback to the question about the podcast, every year, Jason and I will end our podcast season off with a number of things. But 2 of them are, what is your favorite bottling of the year? Typically whiskey of the year, but sometimes bottling. And what is your favorite SCN bottling of the year? And I remember with last year's final episode, I had said it was our Dalyuane 9-year-old, which was our mistake. Some of you may know, we had some Dalyuane. Jason accidentally, that was in first fill bourbon, like it was gorgeous whiskey. Jason accidentally instructed our bottling hall to put it into a first fill sherry cask. So it was like, what the hell did you do? It ended up being wonderful. So wonderful. Exactly. Damn spreadsheets. Damn Scotsman. So wonderful, in fact, that I called it my whiskey of the year. But then I revisited the Copperworks and I said, no. The Copperworks was my SCN whiskey of the year. And here's the reason why. Is it the best thing that I've tasted from SCN that year? I would say the answer is no. Is it excellent? Yes, I feel it's excellent. The reason why it became my SCN bottling of the year, because of everything that we bottled, it was easily the most unique whiskey we bottled that year. Nothing that you'll taste this evening is going to taste like this. Nothing that we bottled last year tasted anything like this. It just, right? Again, Vadim, back to what you say about your group. It's what do? You're looking for new and different. You're looking to just find something that surprises you or takes you out of your comfort zone, or it becomes that thing that's like, oh damn, you need to try this. And so that's what this was for me. And I just think it's gorgeous. It's beery without the hops. It's whiskey, but it's also so citrusy in a way that most whiskey isn't. And I don't know if that's distillate. I don't know if that's yeast driven. I don't know if it's cask driven. I don't know if it's just simply a combination of all, but it really just intrigued me so much. And I'm on my third bottle now, not because I drink that much. I really don't, but it's the one that I share the most because when I have people over and people say, what's interesting, I grab that and I put it down. So anyway, Eliza or Elisa, Eliza, right? Or is it Elisa?
Elissa.
Alyssa, the third
I
option.
know.
Alyssa.
Elissa, it's because my mother's, grew up with around Finnish people, so they don't know how to say their vowels the American way.
So you had a question.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, and I'm just thinking your thoughts, because I have my own, of course, being to the distillery and how they actually deal with the yeast and how they bottle and do all of that is very different than what those of us who are Scotch fanatics and nerds are really used to. So I'm not, I'm wondering, Joshua, if you want to hit on that a little bit. I mean, I have some pictures left from when we went there, but I'll tell you, it's really interesting how they get their distillate, right? And how they use their yeast.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very honest here. I was at the distillery back in February. We were celebrating Elijah Ammon's 30th birthday, and we went there. But, kind of like what Jeff was saying, alcohol was involved. And so there's a lot that I don't quite remember from that distillery visit. And if I'm being very honest, the particulars about their yeast is escaping me at the moment. So Alyssa, if you'd like to share, I'd love for you to share.
So when Alec and I went there, we did this, Elijah told us to go there because, we're friends of Elijah's. And he is actually the one who got me into SCN or interested into SCN. So I was sorry to see him leave, but family first, right? So they start, do you remember this, Alec? How they start with those big long columns and they put your yeast in it, just like
and the first thing you taste is vodka.
Well, he's talking about the tasting we went to. Don't listen to him.
Yeah.
The tasting was part of the tour, and the first thing we tasted was vodka.
Right, but what I'm talking about is the tanks where they do the yeast and where they ferment, right? It's so very different than what we're used to, and it's kind of like what you were alluding to also with the Macmira, right? That they use everyday yeast. Well, as I recall, and I could be completely wrong, but I think they use brewer's yeast.
Yes.
Like from beer brewers. Am I right?
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there at all. Similar to, I would argue Copperworks flavor profile has a similarity to Westward's profile, and they're making like a killer Pilsner to then distill, like a hopless killer Pilsner to distill.
The only thing, and I will tell you that if any of you ever do get to Seattle, I mean, make sure you go to both of those distilleries, but this Copperworks, I'm going to tell you, I think your bottling, this IB bottling of the Copperworks is by far better than what we had at Copperworks. So I just put 2 in my cart.
Thank you.
Just saying.
I
Does that mean I get a free glass?
Sure. Just really quickly, Alyssa. Well, first off, thank you for putting a couple in your cart. I appreciate that. It looked like, and Anna, do you mind if I call on you? Because you're like you're the Washington State distillery person, so you must have some insight. I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, I do have a little bit, so I
Good.
can speak to this. So they actually have the wort made offsite. They work with some local
That's
brewers for
right.
that. And then the fermenters that you're talking about, Lisa, those, yeah, they're beer fermenters. We have the same, we have similar, although they do have the cone in the bottom, like traditional brewers use. But they boil their wort, so, or the wash. So they make like a proper beer, which is not how traditional distillation process is done. So, and that's a big thing that I know Jason is really proud of, that he talks about, you know, the tagline of, from great beer comes great whiskey or something like that.
Mhm.
So that's something, a big point of pride for them, of making a proper beer first, obviously minus the hops and carbonation before they actually distill. But the thing about their stills is they are 4-size stills. They're all manually done. There's no automation, and they are the shapes of, I believe, Belvani and Abelauer stills. So it's really interesting to me that because of the front part of their production process, they still have a product even with the same stills that is drastically different than any Scotch that you would get. But yeah, and the barrels they use are mostly from Calvin Cooperage, I believe. I might
I
be
think
wrong
you're
on that.
right. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but it's they have a range.
As I remember from our visit there, and you know, I was bossy enough to tell them that Elijah sent me, like right when I was making our distillery tour reservation. And then I was also visiting there as part of another group that was going to have Copperworks come and, you know, share. But when we went to Copperworks, I'll share, if you get a chance to go to Copperworks, yes, it's one of Elijah's most favorite places to go. And so when we were coming up to Seattle, I'd never been there. Alec had never been there. He's like, you got to go to Copperworks. You got to go. And then so there was such a buildup, Joshua, that when we got there, we were both kind of disappointed, because the whiskey we had, and you know, I wouldn't say I have an immature palate. I mean, I've tasted a lot of whiskey. I've been, you know, I've had a lot of whiskey, but everything we had there, I would just say that day there was one that I really enjoyed, but just like so many distilleries, the one that I really enjoyed in a tasting, unlike what you're able to do for us today, didn't have anything available then for us to purchase of it. And
that's interesting, right? When I was there in February, we got to taste a host of things, and I thought each one was sort of better than the next. So maybe give it another go. Go back, and hopefully you'll find some ones that you like. But Anna, I really appreciate that. I had forgotten that they don't make their own wort. So that's a really good reminder. And I interviewed Jason Parker. Like, I've been told all of this stuff, but you know, my mind is like a sieve sometimes.
Well,
It's not like you talk to a lot of people or anything.
Thanks to Anna, we actually did a tasting with Jason a couple of years ago, where he educated us on how to taste whiskey and how to pick out different flavor profiles. It was pretty amazing. And I gotta say, the two whiskeys we tried from him, that they only have so limited whiskey at a time, right? And their whole thing is that they're beer guys that got into whiskey. So that was really something I really learned and respect about them. And both of the whiskeys we tried were really unique and really interesting and really tasty. And I loved it.
Yeah.
And I remember kicking myself because one of the whiskeys we tried was their peated, like their first ever peated release.
Oh yeah.
That they got the peat from Westland, and Westland was like, yeah, go ahead, release it first. And it was so lightly peated that I like fell in love with it, and I kicked myself that I didn't get more bottles that I could like save and open later.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's great. And they have a new distiller, I shouldn't say new, a semi-new distiller there. Matt Skinny Roberts, who was on the podcast. He used to be with Black Raven Brewing, who I met through Westland Distillery. many years ago, and so he gives a shit. I really like that. They all give a shit there, which is really cool, and they're making product they care about. So yeah, we're lucky to be able to work with them and marry some casks and bottle them up. And so Alyssa, I'm glad that you like this one. I hope everybody else liked this one. It seems a lot of people liked this one.
This is fantastic. I'm getting like a coffee note right now at the end, like a
Oh,
chocolatey coffee note. So
you had asked
developed.
you had asked before, or you'd mentioned something about this being similar to Golden Carolus. And yeah, right. I mean, Belgian brewer for hundreds of years started distilling. Impex no longer imports Golden Carolus. So it's stopped coming into the US. I don't think they're looking for other distribution at the moment. I think they're having a hard time keeping up with production. We simply didn't get a lot of their stuff.
I'm glad I have a bottle.
Yeah, because it's really good. It's really good.
We tasted it with Sam at our first introduction to Impex tasting light years ago. And
Okay.
I was like, this is so unique and interesting. I have to have one on my shelf. Also, the only Belgian whiskey I can think of. So
There's Belgian Owl as well, but I've not had that one.
yeah, it's the only one that was available to me.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, if I can have another country on my shelf, I have to. And it was very reasonably priced at the time too.
Yeah. Nice.
But
You
this is
guys, another one
fantastic.
to go grab, because on their website, and I posted it up above just because I'm nerdy like that. It's under $100, right? So
It is, yeah. I think it's 90 or 95.
And
Yeah.
The one thing I do appreciate about you guys too is a fixed shipping. Thank you so much.
We
I don't
worked
know,
hard.
maybe you want to talk
Thank
about
you.
that.
I will. Yeah. So we have it went up. I'm being honest, it went up. For years, we had a fixed flat rate shipping of $10. You bought a bottle, $10 to ship. You bought 10 bottles, $10 to ship. Gas has gone up, blah, 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 all the things. It's $15 a flat rate. So it's kind of like the 15/10 commandments, but just the opposite way. For anybody who's watched History of the World Part 1, you'll get that one.
As someone who ships a lot and has over the last 3 years, shipping costs have gone up. It's no joke.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it adds up, and packaging costs have gone, like everything costs more. So $15 for shipping is dirt cheap, especially since it's nationwide.
Yes.
Like it costs $15 to ship one bottle from like California to New York, probably more than that. So if you can do two, you're already winning. So might as well get two, because like just savings wise, it makes sense.
Well, buy one
I would get 10
and buy one Copperwork.
Yeah, at least this copper is delicious. And at 56%, oh my goodness, it's drinking like a 48%er.
Right? Yeah, it's a little too easy, but also complex, right? It's a drinker. It is a drinker.
If I have this in the morning instead of my coffee, will I get in trouble?
I wouldn't fire you.
Depends on who you work for.
You can come work for us.
Oh yeah, you guys have an opening now, right? In California.
It's like if you go work for LA Unified or some district and you walk in with alcohol and breath, not such a good idea.
You just have to blow on your coffee so people think it's coffee on your mug.
Yeah, then it just smells like an Irish coffee.
Yeah, but that
new coffee flavored Nespresso that I got. There's no alcohol in this. You're good.
Are we ready for the 5th bottling?
We are. We're moving into a whole new world. A whole new world. I hear you have perfect pitch, so you should sing for us.
No, it's actually the comment from my teacher was I have almost perfect pitch.
No, wasn't there somebody that commented on the podcast and you like you shine bright like a diamond for like a week?
I did. I felt I was I was walking on air
Yeah,
that
you
time.
felt
Yeah.
seen.
Relative pitch. Yeah, that's it. So we're now entering the world of rum. Just temporarily, we'll go back to whiskey. But this is from a Guatemalan distillery known as Darsa. No one has heard of Darsa. If you have heard of Darsa, that means that you're a bit of a rum geek, or you've read up about this a bit, or maybe you've heard us talk about it on the podcast. But Darsa is the distillery that makes rum for the brand Zacapa. So if you've had Zacapa before, you've had Darsa. The difference is this is not like Zacapa 20. So first off, Zacapa 23, most of you I'm sure know, 23 doesn't signify the age. I think it talks more to the Solera system, if my understanding is correct, because so they use a 23 cask Solera system. If someone has an answer to that is different from that, please let me know. But that's my understanding. This is a single cask. It is 11 years old. We are looking at 56.6% alcohol. It's from a second fill bourbon hogshead. So for those of you that don't know, though I'm sure most of you do, like we talk about barrels and hogsheads and butts and all these things, like barrels don't exist. There's no such thing as a barrel. There is a cask that is barrel in size, just like there's a cask that is hogshead in size. And so, a barrel means 200 liters, a hogshead means it's 250 liters, a butt means it's 500 liters, and so on, right? So with this was from a hogshead, so that means it was 250 liters. Second fill, so this is the second time this was used in the rum industry. 56.6% alcohol. Now, one thing I will say is I lied before. I said everything that we're tasting today is cask strength except for the Wolf Island. This Darsa is not cask strength. And I wanted to point that out because this was not only distilled in Guatemala, but it spent the vast majority of its life maturing in Guatemala. And Guatemala is a very hot country, and ABV goes up, just like many rums from tropical islands and such. And that's something that I think is worth pointing out. There's a reason why distilleries like M&H really like to play around with their different climate zones, because temperature, barometric pressure, humidity levels, and so on affect how your spirit is going to mature, and in the end affect the overall flavor profile of your product. And so if this were distilled in Guatemala and then just moved up to London, where it had been sitting for about 6-ish months or so before we picked it up, it wouldn't taste the way it tastes now. It would taste soft. It would taste relaxed. It would taste easy. You need that hotter climate to bring out some of the funkiness that's going on here, some of the fruitiness, not to bring it up, but to just sort of amplify what's naturally coming through in the distillate. So when we think of rums, first off, I don't know a lot about rum. I don't, period. I know there's 54 different countries that make rum. I know that you can make rum out of molasses. You can make rum out of cane juice. You can make rum out of something called cane honey, which is what Darsa does. They use what's called cane honey, which I think is somewhere in between like a cane juice and a molasses, somewhere in that process. If anybody knows better than I, please do chime in. And they have in the rum world, they have different distillation styles that are different than the whiskey world. When we think of single malt, typically we're thinking of copper pot stills, twice or 3 times distilled, or in the case of, say, bourbon or grain, you've got column stills. Some distilleries will do You know, a combination of pot and column, right? In the rum world, you have distilleries that have a single pot still, and then what's called a retort system, which sort of like redistills what's been distilled and then redistills it again. It's a way of doing double distillation without a second pot to distill it. So it's kind of an unusual way of distilling. So there are things that they do that I'm still learning about. But in the end, all we do, or all we are, is an independent bottler who buys and bottles things that we fall in love with. So we bought this because it tasted good. We bought it because from a pricing perspective, it was also something that we would open our wallets for as drinkers. So it ticked those boxes. And for us, we're always looking for that nose to palate to finish ride. We're also looking for texture, which is something that we don't always find in rum. Rum can sometimes have a slightly thinner palate. In this, I think it's quite creamy, quite rich. I can tell you that this is a natural rum, meaning that there has been no color added to this. There's been no sugar added to this. It just is au natural. I think that the ABV when we bought it was closer to 64-ish. And we just kept tasting and got it to this 56.6, I think it is, which just felt like the proper drinking strength for this rum.
And remind me again, where is rum on your top 9 spirits category?
So let me think about this. So we've got malt whiskey from any country, right? Mezcal, sherry, rye, rum, water, bourbon. There's three other things in there somewhere.
There's got to be a gin or tequila somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a sock off.
I don't think there's a gin. I don't think you guys have a gin.
No, I do. I do love gin, but you know, it's nothing that I typically reach for. I'm gonna put it in a nice cocktail. I want to be brainless and silly about it.
There's some nice
that's
gins
it.
out there, though.
There's some great gins. There's some great gins, and the flavors can absolutely run the gamut, and there's artistry behind it. There's no doubt about it. But for my palate, that's typically not where I'm gonna go.
Mhm.
So
we got 5th for rum for you?
yeah. Fifth for rum.
So I gotta say, for a rum, this is definitely a whiskey drinker's rum. Okay. So if you're not a whiskey drinker, you wouldn't even think this would be a rum. I'm gonna be straight up, because we've got
Interesting.
people out there. Well, it's because we have people that come over, and when I open even up, you know, your Foursquare is like, oh, so good. But I love Foursquare anyway. And I do like black tot, and I like, you know, all the black tot uppers, but the last one, the special distillers one that we got, is so good. But
oh my gosh, amazing.
I will say that this is a whiskey drinker's rum, because my friends would drink this and tell me it's still whiskey.
That's really interesting to hear. I like that Kate. It sounds like Kate is agreeing with you, but is suggesting that the rum really, the rumminess comes through on the finish. I don't know where she went. She's hiding. Sorry. It's almost like whiskey drinkers selected this one.
That's it. That's exactly what I was thinking. That at the taste is, and the nose are whiskey, and then but the finish is clearly a rum.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, we've bottled rums that had more of a funky edge to it. But I'm not gonna lie, like there's plenty of rums like from distilleries like Caroni or Caroni, however you want to pronounce it, that I absolutely I can't connect with. Like Caroni just tastes like drinking tire fires, and like some of the Hampton estate bottlings it's like drinking nightmares. Like it's just too much esters for my palate. But then there are people that say, no, this is what I want. This is what I love. And so, yeah, that, here's something that I would argue. As much as I will profess malt whiskey is likely the most complex spirit that there is, and I'm not saying Scotch malt whiskey, I'm just saying malt whiskey, I would say rum is the most diverse spirit style there is, because the styles absolutely run the gamut. So it's okay to say I like this because it really fits my whiskey palate a bit more. Because there's plenty of other people that say, you know what, that's not for me. I just want to like light this tire on fire and drink it and dress up in Hawaiian shirts and eat pineapple. Like that was my terrible tiki joke of the night. I'm the only one who laughed at that because it wasn't funny.
Well, no, it was. It's just that I was muted.
It's so funny. No, what's funny is that we were talking about this exact thing yesterday with someone, and it's interesting that you say rum is the most diverse spirit category, but then you take whiskey and only do malt whiskey. If you were to say whiskey is a spirit category, I would argue whiskey is the most diverse, because like a rye whiskey versus a bourbon versus a malt versus a peated, so different.
Yeah, that is fair.
Because you went
fair.
subcategory versus broad category.
Yeah, I get, man. Yeah, I guess
whiskey's any grain, right? So like a rice whiskey is going to be totally different from a really old rye.
Hey, Joshua,
whiskey for the win. Whiskey for the win.
Totally get what you were getting at.
Yeah,
I totally.
Rum can be totally broad and beautiful,
and whiskey
and so
whiskey can be broad. Yes, you're right. Like that just goes to show you how incredibly malt whiskey centric I am. Like when I think whiskey, I almost never think bourbon or rye, or I am a malt whiskey person. And so, yes, it's like I needed that reminder, Vadim. So
you said it. You said malt whiskey versus rum. I mean, but I get what.
No, but malt whiskey is I mean, in fairness, it is a subcategory of whiskey. Just as like you've got rum agricole, and then you've got right. So
yeah.
Well, I think it's something you've talked about on your podcast previously is that it's interesting. At some point, maybe it makes sense to like separate the whiskey category, because maybe based on grain or whatever, the new aging styles, the rapid aging or whatever, because some of the stuff is so broad that having it be as vague as grain distilled aged in wood, at some point it's like, whoa, you can't tell that they're in the same family.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And just like I think you might, for the inexperienced rum drinker, who maybe just does just clear Bacardi or Malibu with Coke or something like that, really doesn't know rum, and then taste something like this, may not recognize this as rum, or may not recognize something else as rum. So it's yeah. Anyway, are we ready for the
rum can be very different and beautiful. You're absolutely right.
I don't know. I think if you had put this in front of me, I wouldn't have guessed that it was rum until on the finish, like Kate said. On the finish, it's definitely rum, right?
Yeah, this is rum.
And Alec is like, no, this is rum. But for me, I would taste this. Pat me. you know, I would drink this and I'd be like, wow, this is so good. But there are so
Yeah.
many rums I can't drink.
But there are rums you can drink.
Well, Sailor Jerry ain't one of them.
You know, but Black Tot is.
All
Right.
right, before we lose everyone, let's get to the Invergordon
Yeah.
or Inchgour.
Inchgour. Yeah.
We do our
I
little,
wanna
Alright.
taste it.
So good.
Oh yeah, you're right. Thank you, Kate.
Man,
It's so
Can we
good,
get John
everybody.
and James and Shane and Ken to hop on their camera for just a second? There we go. It's working. It's working.
Hey, hey.
I'm willing people back into existence.
we gotta get John back. Where'd he go?
He's probably smoking a cigar and enjoying some single cast nation bottlings that we're not drinking. Shane, John, give you a second. But yeah, I do want to take a second and thank you so much, Joshua, for taking the evening to hang out with us, share some laughs and share some amazing whiskey. This has been absolutely fantastic. We want to take a second to toast to you and say cheers and say thank you and raise a glass. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending the evening with us. Cheers.
My pleasure. Cheers.
Perfect. Oh, and we got John. Oh, nice.
Hey, oh man, do we need to do it again?
Another photo?
No, I'm here.
I got him. I got him in the
Oh, you
photo.
did get him. Hey, all
Cheers.
right.
Cheers. Cheers,
Is
y'all.
there-
Yeah, cheers.
Does
Wow.
everyone have their eyes open?
His eyes are open. Yep.
There you go.
Fantastic. So cheers. Thank you.
What,
All
what
right.
happened was I had to switch over because my my laptop was acting up, so I had to switch over to my phone. So yeah, called in the plan B.
All right. All right. Well, I'm glad you're back, John. Inchgour, our final pour of the night. And we are back to a situation where we married two casks together. This was not an accident. Jason actually learned how to work a spreadsheet this time around. But this one, so with retail release number 9, and one of the things that we always run into is people saying, man, this is a single cask. I missed it. It sucks that there's only 200 bottles. It sucks that there's only 250 bottles or 150, whatever. So we wanted to create a few different bottlings that had just more to share, right? So that's why one of them was Wolf Island Take 2, and I think 1,500 bottles, somewhere around there. Another is our Inchgour that we're tasting. And then the other is this Kalila, which we're not tasting this evening. That was also 2 casks married together. But these are not haphazard marriages. When we buy these casks from Inchgour or Kalila, we're not buying them from the distilleries. We're buying them from Diageo. And when you buy from Diageo, you know, we're buying a dozen at a time, or, you know, whatever. We're buying a multitude of casks. So we wanted to really find some casks that married well and complemented one another, similar to the Copperworks that we had earlier. And in the case of this Inchgour, this was, I forget how many casks we had, but anyway, some of the casks we put into sherry. We received as ex-bourbon casks. They would have been refill, and then some of them we kept as refill because we wanted to see what that interplay did. So, a little peek behind the curtain. Our sherry cask supplier is known as Miguel Martin. You might know that name from other tastings you've done. Miguel Martin supplies Kilhoman. They supply Glenfarclas. They supply Glenmorangie and a few others with sherry casks. And when you buy sherry casks from them, you can buy, you can stipulate American oak, European oak, Spanish oak. These are all 3 very different oaks. You can specify whether these are seasoned casks or vintage casks, right? So the prices run the gamut. So with the case of what happened here is we took an Inchgauer that was in refill bourbon for 10-ish years, 9-10 years, and we put it into an Oloroso, first fill Oloroso Spanish oak hogshead for Miguel Martin. Spanish oak is really rare, and Miguel Martin has 98% of all the Spanish oak wood contracts. So if you want a Spanish oak cask, that's who you go to. The reason why we choose Spanish oak is there's a heaviness to it. There's a weightiness to it. If you're familiar with Kilchoman Loch Gorm, like I think that's a really good example of Spanish oak doing some magic there, showing you some of that heft going on. So this whiskey spent 10 years. One cask was 10 years in refill bourbon. The other cask was 9 and a bit years in refill bourbon, and then about 9 months or so in this Oloroso hogshead. And then we married the two together. Like, just to give you an idea, the Kalila was 2 refill bourbon casks married together. So one of the Inchgauer casks was about this color. And then we added Spanish oak cask to it, and you can see what happened. It's not too far off from our 14-year-old North British in color, or our 9-year-old Dalyuan in color. So deep, dark, most importantly, delicious. Any Inchgauer fans here prior to this bottling? All right, Alyssa. All right, raise your hand if you've not had Inchgauer before this one. Oh God, I love that. Oh Manischewitz, I love this because I would say that, kind of similar to Wolf Island, we wanted to stay true to the distillery character here, which is one of the reasons we didn't just release that Oloroso cask by itself. The sherry would have totally overtaken it. But there's an earthiness to this, and almost like mushroomy, like yesterday's soy sauce left out overnight quality to this going on. And that is like so true to Inchgauer. It makes me so happy. So this is one that really, if I had to choose 2 favorites from retail release number 9, it would be the Inchgauer and the Kalila. With the Kalila being my absolute favorite from the line.
I'm so glad you mentioned like the funky mushrooms, like older mushrooms. We just bottled a single cask of Frey Ranch that had real fresh mushrooms on it, and it's so different from this. I love getting that funkiness with the earthiness here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fresh mushroom note. That's interesting. Like, are we talking white button? Are we talking lion's mane? Like, where are we, Seabass?
I would say in that white button range.
Okay.
I'll send you a sample. I just got my bottle of it finally.
Okay. Cheers.
It's not their standard taste profile. They worked with a different cooper for this cask, which is wild to see that a different cooper can have that much of an effect on the liquid itself. I had to come around to it, to be perfectly honest, but it has that freshness that this is really that earthiness that is it's like that salty, just umami, like somebody mentioned.
Yeah, umami. There you go. Portobello, get that.
This is so good. This is like sherry, but more so. This is really good.
Right, and so you can just imagine how active that one cask was. Like, it needed refill bourbon to tame it, but then it just like it really made the distillery character shine. Like, it absolutely popped. Yeah, I'm really really happy with this one.
It's also
So,
got
yeah.
it's just big. It's big and chewy.
Yep.
I-
So
yeah, it's a meal unto itself, but I imagine it would stand up well with food. So
it's like a breakfast stout. It's like the breakfast stout of whiskeys.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, Kate, that I hope you've experienced not just with this bottling, but hopefully with our other bottlings, because I don't know if you've had single cask nation before, but as an independent bottler, we don't have a distillery style to shine, right? There, all we can do is show a multitude of flavors. So there's nothing to say like, hey, this is what we're all about from a flavor standpoint. But one thing that Jason and I always focus on is texture. We are texture guys, and we want that richness. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be like drinking motor oil, but there has to be just a good presence of richness in viscosity there. And so hopefully you've experienced that through these bottlings. That is like, again, back to Macmira having peaches as a flavor that shines through, or Balvenie having honey. We try to focus on mouthfeel for our bottlings.
You did a good job.
Thank you.
I mean, these last three, right? The Copperworks, the Darsa, and the Inchgour.
Mhm.
You know, just bigger, bolder. It was
Yep.
appropriate to have them last for sure. And and lots of texture. That was great. And
Cheers.
the first three, there was texture there too. They're just lighter in terms of flavor.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, one of the things that I'll mention too, like I mentioned before with Darsa, right? Like no one's heard of Darsa because Darsa makes Zacapa. They make a brand. The same rings true for Inchgour. It's a pretty massive distillery for Diageo, right? Diageo owns Johnny Walker. And so as a blend, and Inchgour just happens to be one of the distilleries that Diageo owns to produce single malt specifically to go into Johnny Walker and some other blends as well, right? So you'll never find you'll rarely find anything bottled by Diageo with an Inchgour label. They may do a special edition, a very rare bottling here and there, but typically the only way you'll ever taste Inchgour as a single malt would be through an independent bottler. So if you liked this, A, please, I hope you grab a bottle. But B, like check out other Inchgours. Like if this fits your wheelhouse, there are other great bottlers too. Like check them out. It's a distillery worth celebrating.
Yeah, with that Inchgour, just the way by the name, I totally thought it would be single grain. For some reason, in my head,
yeah.
it's single grain. But this is it's my first time having Inchgour, and it's another one of those where it's like, wow, that's fantastic.
Best that and Linkwoods. When SCN puts them out, grab them. And dupes.
We have a few more Linkwoods coming. There's one from a Chardonnay cask, which sounds strange. It's the French oak pops, not the wine.
I was gonna say
this-
from guys who don't like wine cask whiskey.
It was odd, right? Back to purchasing casks from, the parent company. It's a situation where you purchase casks and you get what you get and you don't get upset. And we asked in this case for just like first fill bourbon, and we got first fill, but it wasn't bourbon. And you could, on the cask, you could see the winery. And then you go to the winery website and you see the wines that they produce, and they talk about the oak. And then once you read that, that's when the flavors make sense. And it just works so well with Linkwood. It amplifies their distillate. but then there's this like lovely French oak, spicy, fruity character that shines so nicely. So I'm excited
I have
about
two
that
of
one.
them. You know, we have both the 11, is it 10 and 11? And I gotta just say,
Could be. There was one for Barrel Thief in Seattle as well.
oh yeah, I think that's the one that Elijah got me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it was.
We have that one. Beautiful. Love it.
Yes.
Nice.
Me
Cheers.
too. But I am an Inchgour fan, you know, and an Linkwood fan. So anything having to do with either one, I'll be like all in. So
I don't blame you. You got good taste.
although now here's the one that I really wish we could replicate, but it's not, you can't replicate it, is Imperial. Because
You're
and
preaching
I
to
know
the
you
choir,
feel my
Alyssa.
pain. I'm just,
Yes. It's the
I know
number
you
one
feel my
distillery
pain.
I collect. Yeah. So I've got a question for everybody really quickly, and I realize it's midnight for me. It's midnight 01 for me. It's much earlier for you. So I need to get going in a little bit, but I do have a question because I always like to know what people's favorites were of the evening. Do you mind? Can I ask? Cool.
I'm glad you asked. If
So
only we
Rick,
had the technology to do a poll.
do you have a poll? Do you do that?
Yeah, we already had one. We just did it.
We
Did you
already
vote?
did it.
When did you do that? Oh, Jesus
While we were
Christmas.
chatting, Joshua, while we were
It
chatting.
popped. See, I have a second screen over here.
Mhm.
Okay, so I've got to answer.
You should.
Well, you're hosting. Do you wanna?
You should. Pick your favorite.
All right, I've just done that. Okay, so awesome.
There you go. All right. Everybody got their vote in. Now we're going to close it up now. With the fun thing we do, and yes,
Do-do.
Mr. Joshua and Jason joke here, is give you the opportunity to guess what you think the group's favorite was.
Holy moly. I oof. It
You
wasn't the
know the answer. Just don't dig too deep.
Yeah, my gut tells me it's McMira. That's my gut.
All right. And the results are in.
Inchgour.
46%
All right, McMira.
voted for Inchgour, and second place is McMira.
Wow. Look
Yeah,
at
but
that.
Inchgour took it.
It's funny when you started talking about your emphasis on the mouthfeel and the texture. That's what put the Inchgour over the top of the McMyra for me. It was McMyra up until the Inchgour, and then the mouthfeel on this is just so amazing that it just sits there and it coats it. And I love that in a whiskey, is when it sits there and it coats your tongue and you can sit around and it just hangs out. It's like, hey, how you doing? You know,
Keep talking. I'm almost there.
You know, and then 15 minutes later, 15 minutes later, your glass has been empty for 15 minutes, and it's like, what's up? Still sticking around. You know, and
Now the glass. That's when you nose the glass and you're like, yeah, I need another one.
Yeah. The Inchgour is pretty phenomenal. Yeah. And here's the thing. I enjoyed all of these. And then I got to the Inchgour and I was like, well, it's not really much of a contest.
There you go. I think Sam mentioned some of the stores that it may be in. I mean, I'm sure
It's in the chat. People have been tossing links in there all up and down all night long.
I love it when I don't have to put my sales hat on. That's great.
I did cut you off. You had a couple of questions. You wanted to poll the group. I did want to show off that I got that one thing right. But other than that, please feel free to ask. And
that was my one question. I like knowing what people's favorites were and typically why. So it sounds like mouthfeel was the one that put it over the edge for the Inchgour folk. For the Copperworks folk, what was it about the Copperworks? For those people who chose it as their favorite, what was it? Yeah.
Yes, but why? He's asking why.
It was good whiskey.
Fair. Okay.
I don't know what
Very
else to say
scientific.
about why. It was really good whiskey.
Mm.
I gotta say, I went back to the McMira, and I'm getting like raw almonds on this that I'm just absolutely
Ooh.
loving.
Hmm.
Mm.
I like that. Okay.
I mean, these are all great.
Hey, I've done a couple tastings with you, Joshua. I just wanted to say hi. I purchased a bottle of the Copperworks. I thought it was the best whiskey of the night for me. I'm not a peated fan, as Vadim knows. So that's why I chose Copperworks. Some of it was a little too peaty for me, but it was all good.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for grabbing that. And good to see you again. Well, is this a real background? Like you've got a serious, like this guy's serious with his bottles. Okay. All right. I
He is
assume,
serious
Vadim, you're
and
not in
they're-
a warehouse.
He's serious and they look nice behind him. We just have dark behind us, but I have a sidebar. Jordan will visit it. Yes? We have some people that visit. Kate's tried.
Oh, there you go.
There's darkness in the room, but I am enjoying it. Some of these samples out of this beautiful glass that somebody sent me.
Hey, there you go. Whiskey Jubilee.
Thank you.
Nice.
That is a really
This is the time for the obligatory question about the Jubilee. Because I always want to know. Can we bring it back, please?
So you will be pleased to hear that a goal for 2024 is to do a weekend Jubilee event that involves camping, involves just like a massive get together. We've frequented malt stock in the Netherlands, which is like easily the best whiskey event I've ever been to in my entire life. And we were interested in doing something similar to their event here in the US. And so we asked them, would you be okay with us, mimicking what you've done, but putting a Jubilee twist to it? And they said, no, please do that. So 2024 is the target. If we can bring it back in a much more regular way, we can, but it's, it's a time management thing. But here's the thing, next year is our bar mitzvah year. So, I mean, we got to do something about that. So we think we want to celebrate with the Jubilee. So
Can we sign up now? Can we like pre-register?
I mean, Whiskey Jubilee. I mean, come on, Whiskey Jubilee. How many people at this point in time actually celebrate Jubilee?
but no, it's done the fun way with the Jew.
Mhm.
It's like JEW.
That's
Yeah,
what I just told him. I said,
Yeah.
No, I get it. It depends on what it's the Jubilee of.
well, right. Is it the wedding one? Because the wedding one, oh my God, I want the wedding.
It has nothing to do with that. It's Jubilee spelled
I
with
know
Jew.
it is.
It has nothing to do with it.
It doesn't, but the thing is that there's certain bottlings of, I would like every single bottling of the bottle.
Oh yeah,
But-
we're working on. So Whiskey Jubilee had a festival bottling. We've done 12 festival bottlings. This will give us the opportunity to do a 13th festival
Oh,
bottling.
that's such a great number for a Jubilee, right?
There we go.
And-
Kate
and
nailed
yes.
it.
We're all
Out the
going to
park.
be wearing T-shirts that say "Kiss Me, I'm Jewish," or
Yeah,
Exactly.
because the thing
With
is,
me, I'm
if you're not, you don't understand that 13 is a lucky number.
Oh yeah, it's my lucky number.
No, listen, you're going, okay, Alec has his opinion.
No, if I have 13 emails in my inbox, I freak out.
Oh, you
But
only
only
stay in
13.
hotels that don't have a 13th floor. I've heard about people
Oh,
like you.
I lived on Euclid Street because in Santa Monica, they won't do 13th Street.
Yeah.
It's Euclid. It's not, it's a thing, but Jubilee with the 13, I'm in, those Finnish Jews, they do their thing. Google Finnish Jews and they look like me, blonde, blue-eyed, light in the menorah.
My daughter has a Finnish Jewish friend, by
Wow.
the way. There you go.
It's a thing. People think that we're all Lutheran. Nope.
You mean
I
all
thought you were all Finnish.
We're pretty
So-
much all finished. I agree.
I
So
think
listen, on that bombshell that all Jews are Finnish, I need to finish because I'm getting the tired eyes. So
For sure. Thank you so
Um,
much, Joshua. We appreciate you spending the evening
Okay,
with us. This
where
has
do
been
you think
absolutely
there's more Jews, Finland or Tokyo?
that's a tough
That's fine, Chris. That is a
Okay,
tough
my
one.
cousin was the ambassador.
I'm meant to go to
Israel.
sleep. What are you doing?
I would say Florida. I mean, that would be my guess.
Oh, Florida.
That is
All
an
right.
The only
excellent guess.
choices are Finland and Tokyo.
Awesome. Joshua, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. These have been fantastic. We're going to pick up a few bottles and we hope to see you on another virtual tasting in the future. Beyond that, I'm really hoping to go camping with you, share some stories. We'll talk about ghost stories, including Finnish and Japanese Jews if we have to. But other than
Oh,
that,
it's a
the
good,
best to your
it's a good,
families. Please tell Jason we said hi when he comes back out of the wilderness.
please do.
I will to.
Please do.
I will to. All right.
Love you. Thank
Good
you so
night,
much.
everybody.
Hi, Josh.
Thank you all
Good
so
night.
much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
you.
Absolute pleasure, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.